Hey,
Happy Monday, guys.
Down.
There's no camel on Monday, is there?
There is no camel. This is the dance for Monday, and then for Wednesday it's this. This is the Wednesday dance, and then this is my Monday dance.
So Wednesday's a little bit of Harlem Shake, and
Yeah.
then I don't know what Monday is. Raise the roof, maybe.
Yeah.
or like a little bit of to the window, to the wall. But hey, guys, happy Monday, guys. Welcome into another Monday Rundown.
We're excited to have you with us. If this is your first time with us, go ahead and put a 1 in the comments. That way we can shout you out. We love to say hello to our newest people who are joining us for different conversations. If you are a part of Say That Nation, this is a second, third, fourth time that you've been with us. Hello, welcome back, Say That Nation. We love to have you.
Guys.
And so if you are a first timer with us and you're wondering, like, what are these guys all about anyway? We love to have conversations about things to get people to think in new ways about life in general. Wednesdays is typically about business and finances and entrepreneurship, but Mondays, we love to keep it open. And so we have been bringing in other content creators, other people who are big idea people to kind of give us an idea of something that like we didn't think about in a certain way, or just like a new way to look at things, just so we can all continue to grow and develop, right? Because if you're not growing, you're dying. And we're really excited to continue to do that this Monday and for you to join us in the conversation.
Yeah, so guys, the way we typically do that is we have a topic or a question of the day. We dive into that. Janelle and I kind of bounce back and forth. And then now we add in our third opinions or views. And so today will be no different. So let's jump into today's topic.
The question is, can you break bad habits? Can you really though? Like, can we really break the bad habit? We talked about habits before, and I think
that was a good one.
Yeah, the idea was about like friction. If you can create more friction between you and the bad habit, you're more likely to break doing the thing. And if there's a good habit that you want to create, then the idea was to reduce the friction between you and doing that thing. And then you're more likely to do the thing.
Yeah.
Really quickly, if you're like, what does that mean? That sounds too meta for me. An example is a good habit you want to create. Maybe it's exercising more, right? And so creating less friction around exercising might be so I know somebody who sleeps in their gym clothes. So they literally wake up and they're in their gym clothes. And so they're like, I guess I'm going to the gym because I'm already in my gym clothes, right? So there's not like, oh, what am I going to wear? Oh, I got to go to the gym. Like it's like they're already in their clothes. That's like an idea of like, what can you do to reduce the friction to include it?
Make things easier. Yeah.
That's
actually a really good one.
We talked about me picking my cuticles. And so the idea for creating friction around that, Winston had a brilliant one. He was like, all right, so like, do you do it when you paint your nails? And I was like, I don't. And he was like, oh, well then, just have your nails painted. Do that regularly and you'll probably, and I'm like, that was smart. The other thing that I noticed that happens is when I keep my nails very short. It also doesn't allow me to do the picking thing because I don't have nails to do the picking. So I also just recently cut all my nails.
That one's one for me as well.
Yeah. Anyway, so I feel like we've talked about this, and I feel like there are tools in which you can do one or the other. I it's funny thinking about this question again, though. I was like, but if it's like, I don't know, are there just some bad habits that like just can't be broken, or is it that we're just unwilling to stop them? And so that's kind of where I landed. It became much more of a philosophical question after looking at the question again, or as we were preparing for the question today. So that's my take on it. I think it might end up becoming philosophical. Like, if it's a bad habit that seems like impossible to break, is it because like maybe there's something going on there where the benefit of whatever the bad habit is, you feel like is worth it to continue?
Well, that's actually, I'm happy you took this there because that's essentially where I've always found that there is some truth that you get a benefit from something, even if we constitute it as a negative, something in you is getting benefit from it. And I know one thing that, or actually another way that you could also look at that is, and I think the way the quote is like, if a dog is sitting on like, oh no, maybe it's like an adage or like, why is that dog moaning? It's like, oh, he's sitting on a nail. And it's like, oh, why won't he move? And it's like, oh, it's not hurting him enough to move, right? So if we look at like a bad habit that way, you could then say, oh, well, if it's not so bad that it's causing, really bad pain, then I'll leave it going. But if we look at it based on what I said earlier, I think the benefit for that dog in that example is the dog is resting. And so the benefit the dog's getting is this rest, and it's not, to the point of the story, in enough pain to move. So I
Yeah.
think, to what you said, yes, I think it could be a case of some bad habits are providing a benefit, and so if it doesn't get to a point, unfortunately, where you're in so much pain or you could maybe really hurt yourself, examples ODing and things like that. I do believe though that you can break the habit. You may not get the opportunity to, unfortunately, but I do believe that. You know what I mean? Maybe like finding out somebody died in a car accident because they drank a lot. And the reality of it is, had they just gotten a certain type of help, they could have broken that addiction. And yet they didn't have that opportunity. But I
Right.
do, just to answer the question, I do think we can break bad habits because habits are formed. Nobody comes out the womb having, well, let me speak because I don't know all the Janelle's in genetics. So I don't want to get into certain areas that I don't know. So I'm going to say, for the most part, we aren't born with certain habits. Because just now in my head, I thought of somebody who was, if their parents was addicted to heroin, that child is born with that tendency. So, there obviously could be certain things that you can inherit that are really challenging to overcome.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely know that there's, but I do think you can break bad habits. I do think it is possible given the certain type of help. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I know we got the people from Big Think to jump in on this conversation. So Janelle, cue that one up and let's jump into it and hear what they got to say.
All right. Here we go.
The key thing about a habit really comes down to decision making, because sometimes people think about it's something that you do repeatedly, or it unfolds over time, but really the key thing about a habit is that you're not making a decision. You're not deciding whether to brush your teeth, you're not deciding whether to use a seatbelt, you're not deciding whether to go to the gym first thing in the morning. You've already decided. And the advantage of a habit is that once something's on automatic pilot, then the brain doesn't have to use any energy or willpower to make a decision. You've already made that decision, you're just moving forward. And so it happens easily, without any thought, without any willpower, without any effort. You're just on cruise control, and then you can do what you want to get done. Habit is like the invisible architecture of everyday life. Research shows that something like 40% of what we do every day, we do in pretty much the same way and in the same context. So it's easy to see that if you have habits that work for you, you're much more likely to be happier, healthy, and more productive. If you have habits that don't work for you, it's really going to drag you down, because such a big part of our days is taken up by habits.
And this gets to sort of the way that habits work, which is that there's this thing called the habit loop. There's three parts to it. There's first a cue, which is a trigger for a behavior. And then the behavior itself, which we usually refer to as a routine, or scientists refer to as a routine. And then there's the reward. And the reward is actually why the habit happens in the first place. It's how your brain sort of decides, should I remember this pattern for the future or not? And the cue and the reward become neurologically intertwined until a sense of craving emerges that drives your behavior. And this actually explains so much of our lives, and not only like our lives, but also how companies function.
So what happened is that the world around us is designed to tempt us. One of the principles from behavioral economics is choice architecture. The idea that when we are placed in an environment, we make decisions as a function of the environment we're in. Think about the environment that we're in. What is it about? Is it about our long-term health, or is it about the short-term profits of that environment? You walk down the street, there's a coffee shop. What does this coffee shop want? They want you to be healthy in 30 years from now, or do they want you to buy another coffee right now? Dunkin' Donuts, what is their optimization function? Are they trying to get you to be healthy in 20 years or to buy another donut now? Your cell phone, what is it trying to do? To get you to be a productive citizen in 2 years, or to check your phone a couple of more times today? So what happened is that we are in an environment that tempts us all the time. These temptations are only increasing, and because of that, we fail.
One of the mysteries of habits is, why do we persist in having bad habits when we know they're not good for us, when they know they don't make us happy? But there's usually multiple things going. Maybe it's what you want right this minute versus what you want on the long term. Or maybe you want two things that are in conflict.
One example of rationality in action, just to give you a sense of what it looks like and how it's relevant. Back in 1985, Intel had a large foot in the memory chip manufacturing business, and they'd been losing money on memory chips for years. So the two co-founders, Andy Grove and Gordon Moore, met to figure out what to do. And at one point, Andy asked, "What do you think a new CEO would do if the board kicked us out and brought in a new CEO?" And without hesitating, Gordon replied, "Oh, he would get out of the memory business." And Andy said, "Well, so is there any reason we shouldn't do that if we just walk out the door and come back in and switch out of the memory business?" And in fact, that's exactly what they decided to do, and it was a huge success. And this is just one example of a cognitive bias that appears in lots of contexts and lots of scales, called the commitment effect, where we stick with a business plan or a career or a relationship long after it's become quite clear that it's not doing anything for us, or that it's actively destructive or self-destructive, because we have an irrational commitment to whatever we have been doing for a while, because we don't like the idea of our past investment having gone to waste, or because it's become part of our identity. And the technique that Andy and Gordon used to snap themselves out of the commitment effect is also a really generally useful technique called looking at a problem as if you were an outsider, an outside party.
So here's what happens. When you think about your own life, you're trapped within your own perspective. You're trapped within your own emotions and feelings and so on. But if you give advice to somebody else, all of a sudden you're not trapped within that emotional combination, mishmash, complexity, and you can give advice that is more forward-looking and not so specific to the emotions.
So when you have a bad habit, it's very helpful to think very clearly, what do I really want over the long term? What's really most important to me? And that can help you fight back against the pull, the gravitational pull that a bad habit can exert.
I was probably over 340, certainly around there. And now as I sit here in front of you, I'm probably about 232. There's a fluctuation of a couple pounds. It goes back and forth. It's a lot of weight. I did not lose it for vanity. I was pretty happy with myself fat. I didn't mind being fat. Wasn't a big deal to me. I didn't mind how I looked. But my health was getting bad. I didn't even mind how I felt very much. I didn't mind, not being energetic and stuff. But I started having blood pressure that was stupid high, like, English voltage, like 220, even on blood pressure medicine. And I have two young children. I'm an old dad. My daughter was born when I was 50. And now that I'm lighter, I feel lighter and I feel happier. And, there's a chance, my chances of living longer for my children have gone up considerably. I lost my mom and dad when I was 45. And a year of my life was in deep, deep mourning, And there's a very good chance my children will have to go through losing their dad. And I much rather they do that when they're a little older than having to do that when they're 15. Turns out that being with my children is more important to me than chocolate cake.
If you look at life as a series of goals, which for many of us it is, it's a period of being unsuccessful in achieving the goal, then hitting the goal, then feeling like you haven't really got much from that goal, going to the next one. And goals generally, I think, are in many ways broken processes. I think part of the problem with goals is that they don't tell you how to get to where you're going. A better thing to do is to use a system. So the idea behind a system rather than a goal is that a system is saying things like, I'm a writer. My goal is to finish writing this book, but I'm not going to think about it that way. Eventually I'll have 100,000 words, but what my system will be that for an hour every morning, I will sit in front of my computer screen and I will type. It doesn't matter what that looks like. I'm not going to evaluate the number of words. I'm not going to set some benchmark, some artificial number or benchmark that I should reach. What I'm going to do is just say, here's my system, an hour a day in front of the screen, will do what I can, bam. And the thing is, every time you set a system and you stick to it, you're achieving something. Instead of a goal that you're failing, essentially, for long periods of time until you reach the goal, you're succeeding every day as long as you adhere to your system. And you end up getting to the same place, but that framing is so much more effective. It gives you the kind of positive feedback you seek. And a system is kind of geared towards psychological well-being. This is the thing I need to do to feel good about the way I'm moving through the world towards whatever end state I'm looking for. Goals don't do that. They just set signposts that you're supposed to look at from afar and move towards. Systems are a much more useful way of engaging with the world towards certain ends and certain outcomes.
You have to kind of build these self-control muscles, these habits, if you will, make it part of your lifestyle so that it's automatic. It's not a big effort for you anymore. And so you can start small, start with small things, make them a habit, and then build up to bigger things. There's also something called temptation bundling. And so we compare a want activity with a should activity. No one really wants to do a should activity all the time. It is a muscle, and even willpower, you have to give it a little bit of a break. And so when people do a should activity all the time, they get fatigued. And they show healthcare workers they're supposed to wash their hands all day. And they start doing it less at the end of the day. And so when they give them longer breaks in between their shift, they find that they'll continue to do it. They'll wash their hands through to the end of the day. And so it's important to take the breaks, engineer in a break into this long-term regimen that you have.
Once a habit exists, you can't just quelch it. You can't pretend it's not there. You have to sort of accommodate this need in your life. And so the answer is to give yourself 5 minutes every hour. In fact, you can set an alarm at the end of every hour, give yourself 5 minutes to surf the web. Because if you allow yourself 5 minutes every hour, it won't explode into 45 minutes because you've been trying to suppress it.
It's very important to know what a treat is. A treat is not a reward. It's not something that you get because you earned it. You don't have to justify it. A treat is something that you get because you want it. And treats may sound like kind of a selfish, self-indulgent strategy to use, but treats are very important because the fact is, treats help us get self-command. They energize us. They make us feel comforted and cared for. And when we are like that, then we can ask more of ourselves in other ways. So when we give more to ourselves, we can ask more from ourselves. And you often hear people when justifying a bad habit with like, I need it, I've earned it, I deserve it. So, and a lot of times people go for unhealthy treats because they feel like they need to recharge their battery. And so they use an unhealthy treat. But if you load yourself with healthy treats, if you have a lot of items to choose from, and it's not as easy to come up with a long list of healthy treats as you think, then you're going to be able to recharge your battery. And there are some treats that are often unhealthy. Food treats, technology treats, and shopping treats. A lot of times these can become unhealthy treats very quickly. So if you use them, you have to be very mindful and use them judiciously and know that they're not going to spiral out of control for you. One question is whether you're better off trying to do one habit at a time if you're trying to make change, or whether you do many all at once. And like many things with habit formation, there's just no magic answer. There's no one size fits all solution. Some people do better when they start small, when they keep it very simple, and they gain the habit of the habit. They get a feeling of accomplishment, and it's very manageable and realistic because it's something very small and it's just like one thing. But on the other hand, there's some people who love to go big, that love big transformations and big challenges. And so something to do is to think about yourself and think, well, what have I succeeded in the past? Or what appeals more to my nature? And to think about what works for you, because there really isn't one perfect way to change a habit or to change a bunch of habits.
Definitely can't be like one magic bullet. And I think we've been finding that across a lot of the videos we've been seeing.
I agree. What really stuck out to me too was the systems. Sorry, just had to find myself.
No, go for it. Yeah.
I really like this idea of like, instead of like shooting for the goal, it's like put in place a system, which might seem like a habit, right? Like I have this habit of writing every day for an hour. If you know the goal is to write the book, but like what systems can you put in place to do that? It's the same thing like with even the going
Pomodoros and
Pomodoros.
Yeah,
I was gonna say going to the gym. The system is I go to sleep in my workout clothes, or for me, it's my mat is right next to my bed, so I wake up in the morning and then like I exercise. Like it's that's my system that I put in place. So like it like
to create less resistance. It's like the things build on each other. This one I think got a little bit more in detail. One is the most I've ever seen different speakers in one video. I was like, they're like just keep coming out here now. So shout outs to all the people who are on this one. That was really good. That was really cool
even
to see
10,
all the
right?
books. Yeah. Oh, I watched his. I think it was on Netflix. I watched his special where he talked about this
Huh.
and why he had to lose that weight. He did mention it was his kids. And if you use the analogy I used earlier, or the story about the dog, he used something similar when he talked about that was the thing that motivated him. He used that same comment about the cake. I loved my kids more than I love chocolate cake. And he said that was the thing. The doctor essentially said, you know, don't you care about yourself? And he was like, oh, I'm okay with being fat. And the doctor pointed out to him, he was like, well, do you care about your kids getting to see you live? And he said that was like, and it was weird because he goes, of course he knew he had kids, but having it framed to him that way, he said it was almost like he had an awakening. And then if you watch that special, and I'll see if I can find it to post in our description, he discusses how he lost that weight. It was very unorthodox in some sense because it wasn't like a traditional, he ate something that I don't think in most people would be like, how do you lose weight eating that? And he basically just ate like, I think potatoes or something like that and lost a ton of weight. So that he talks about how that kind of ties in, like how our mindset about things affects the way we are, like the food, the treat. I mentioned this a couple episodes ago about like how Travis just, shout outs to him, in his memory, essentially, how he framed treat meals and cheat meals. And he said there's a very negative connotation. You don't realize you don't want to be cheating. Most people don't want to be cheating on anything. So you don't want to put that connotation to the thing you're doing, that you're essentially, and she said not to say reward yourself, but it's like you want to give yourself something. And so if you're calling it a cheat meal, it kind of just defeats the purpose because something inside you doesn't want to be doing that. For most people, I'd say. I don't think many of us out here want to be cheating or anything on anything, right?
Right.
So,
well, I love that, right? It's the perception of like what's worth it to you. You use the dog sitting on the nail analogy. I think that is a big part of it. It's like, what are you getting out of being, in Penn's case, what are you getting out of being fat, right? Well, for him, who knows what it was, but it was okay with him, right? What are you getting out of whatever the bad habit is whatever you're getting out of that is deemed at some point more important. But when your mindset switches and now all of a sudden the other thing that's opposite of the bad habit becomes more important, then it all of a sudden becomes easier to change your habits, I believe.
Well, you know, the thing, and this is semantics, I think, it makes me think of when we used to ask people what their why was in trying to not encourage them to join or to consider multiple streams of income and looking at different business models, right? The essential question was, well, why would you want to now give up your evenings or a couple hours on the weekend to build a business? And we would always try and find, and I think the term is your pain point. And I hope I'm using that. I think it was called your pain point. Like, what's that thing that hurts that the extra $500 or $1,000 a month could help you with? And if we can get somebody there or help somebody identify that, it was easier for us to keep them motivated towards the goal than if we were just trying to push our agenda onto them. Because if that person doesn't have it within themselves or find whatever it is that's going to motivate them, then you are essentially going to have to be policing this person. No one wants a second job. That's not why people got involved with what we were doing, right? So I feel like the terminologies in this video seem different, but I feel like a lot of it was leading towards things that we've addressed or touched on before, right? Like, what's the thing that would motivate you to make that phone call tonight? And a lot of people, it was their children, their, not seeing their family, things like that. Just maybe personal goals. So this was a really good video. At one point, I literally was going to ask you to go back. So I'm going to rewatch. Literally, there's a point where I was going to be like, oh, no, wait, go back. What did he just say? Because like one guy touched on something. The gentleman that was talking about the goals, I think it was him. And I was like, oh, that's really good. That's really, really good to not make it, to kind of make it into, actually, I don't even think that's what he was saying.
Right. I mean, micro goals, could micro goals be?
No, but he was saying something else. Exactly. Yeah. He was saying, let's change the whole dynamic of how you're looking at your goals and look at it this way. And to your point, implement a system to help you still achieve it. But you're not now obviously so fixated on, oh my God, I didn't do, and you've talked about this even with writing. You're like, oh my God, I didn't get this much done today. But you had a system of, well, I know I'm going to devote this much time to my book each day.
Each day, yeah.
So this was a really good video.
The last thing I wanted to point out too was the giving yourself 5 minutes to just like stroll randomly on the internet, but like doing it every hour. Like for every hour, you get 5 minutes to just do whatever you want on the internet.
Oh yeah.
I love that, because he's right. When you the willpower, that muscle, willpower, we are constantly making willpower decisions every single day. They call it I don't know if it's decision fatigue.
I've seen
Anyway.
that before. That's why they say wealthy people don't have that. That's why they wear the same clothes and things like that, to avoid having to make
less decisions. Exactly.
Yeah.
Because the next thing you know, you're at home and you're devouring a whole piece of pie because you've been making these willpower decisions all throughout the day, and now you're done.
And you're burnt out. Yeah, and you're absolutely burnt out by the end of the day.
Yeah. So I love that.
Like,
why don't you just give yourself the freedom to do the thing scroll? I mean, he used the example of scrolling through the internet.
That's where it was. I read something that talked about this and how students should be using this when they study, because many students, to his point, or to that gentleman's point, they'll do what they think is like a good amount of work, and then when they do try to give themselves a break, they fall into that 45-minute trap he mentioned. And what the study said is what students' effective studying looks like is there's a set amount of time for their work, and then they're scheduling in the time for their break. And all it is now is about and all it is now is about being consistent with that. Meaning, if you say you're going to do work for 45 minutes, then that last 15 minutes of that hour is going to be you just having fun. What they found is, you're still going to spend maybe two hours not doing work, but you got way more out of your effective 45 minutes per hour than had you sit there and really say to yourself, I'm going to try and bust butt for 4 hours. He goes, the likelihood of you being like really into it isn't the case. You're gonna drift off. You may not go on your phone, but you'll find other things to kind of distract you. Yeah. So it's just better if you actually give yourself that break, or give your work into your system that I'm gonna take time for myself to do this. So this is a really great video, guys. Let us know what was the one thing you heard that you're like, wow, I didn't know that. And tell us then the next thing would be, what's the thing that you're like, I'm going to start doing this.
Yeah.
I'm going to implement this. I didn't know this before, or maybe I had some idea of it, but hearing them articulated a certain way, I'm going to start doing this. Because for me, it's definitely going to be the way goals are set up for me. I really like that. Not really setting like weight goals and financial goals. Like even for us, we talk about having goals for this channel. And I literally, as you were saying, and I was like, oh, that's so funny, because that's how I do that. I'm like, oh, I want us to be this many subscribers by this period of time, as opposed to just saying, well, our system is we stay consistent with the videos, we stay consistent with the shorts, and that'll achieve what we really want.
What we're looking for,
or we'll maybe even blow past our goal, which would be great. And you can take part in that by sharing. No, let me not.
Yes, and subscribing. I mean, it's true.
It is. Share this content, subscribe, click the notification bell. But definitely let us know, guys, in the comments what you thought about this video and a takeaway that you got from today. Today, this was a really, really good one, I gotta say.
And as we take off from you guys, as always, remember, you deserve the good life. Say that.
Say that. We'll see you guys on Wednesday.